And while the government has issued a statement saying attempts are being made in some quarters to give a mischievous interpretation to remarks by the Prime Minister at the all-party meeting yesterday. The statement says Prime Minister Narendra Modi was clear that India would respond firmly to any attempts to transgress the line of actual control. In fact, he specifically emphasized that in contrast to the past neglect of such challenges, Indian forces now decisively counter any violations at the LAC. The APM was also informed that this time Chinese forces have come in much larger strengths to the LAC and that the Indian response is commensurate. As regards transgression of LAC, it was clearly stated that the violence in Galwan on 15 June arose because Chinese side was seeking to erect structures just across the LAC. I want to cut across to my colleague and our executive editor Abhishek, who's now joining us on the phone line, because Abhishek, there has been some adverse talk after Prime Minister's statement yesterday, but now the government clearly saying that the Prime Minister's statement is being misinterpreted. What is the clarification? Tell us in detail.
Well, there was an attempt being made to show, as can be seen from the press conference of Congress Party, Suresha, that Prime Minister kind of suggested or actually said that no Chinese are on Indian side, and yet this Galwan Valley incident happened. The fact of the matter is the Prime Minister actually narrated the event itself, first commending the bravery of the soldiers who laid down their lives, and then saying that the increased Chinese aggression was met with equal counterforce and that the Chinese were stopped in their designs of erecting any structure on the Indian side of LAC, because of which, as of today, there is no Chinese soldier on that side of LAC at that Galwan Point area. So Prime Minister was very clear, very specific. This is something which has been corroborated by the Chinese when they say that Indians of late have become very aggressive in terms of countering the Chinese patrols. Indians have built a lot of infrastructure and border control points, and they are obstructing Chinese patrols, which is actually a proof of increased Indian military activity in terms of patrolling and countermeasures along the disputed line of control or disputed line of actual control or disputed border, as one would say, between India and China in the Ladakh sector. So in a way, what Prime Minister said was corroboration of facts on the ground. Prime Minister is someone who's briefed not just by the Defense Minister or the External Affairs Minister, but by the Army Chief and the Chief of Defense Staff on a daily basis. He is someone who's fully aware of the facts. He is making an address to the nation, which is going live. And in that, despite that, for the opposition and the Congress Party to really try to suggest that the Prime Minister was economizing with truth is really mischievous and dishonest. And this statement really puts those records straight in terms of what the Prime Minister said, what the words really meant. And for example, Prime Minister said that those who tried to transgress our land were taught a befitting lesson by our brave sons of the soil. And that really sums up the ethos and the values of our armed forces. To further emphasize, I want to assure you that our armed forces will leave no stone unturned to protect our broad borders, and to that extent, they have been given full freedom. So I believe some twisting of words of the Prime Minister was happening immediately after his statement, and subsequently we have seen the Congress press conference. So this rebuttal and a statement coming in from the government, which says that what is Indian territory is clear from the map of India.
Abhishek,
which is
not just this, because we know how most of the parties, except for the Congress, have backed the centre in the all-party meeting on the LAC. Now, also take us through details of what the other parties had to say and who really has misinterpreted what the Prime Minister has said.
I will come to that, Suresha. In fact, one more point I wanted to make was that the all-party meeting was clearly briefed about what is Indian territory. In fact, a PowerPoint presentation was made by External Affairs Minister as to what constitutes Indian territory, what are India's map, what is government's position in it, what has been the history of the last 60 years, how 43,000 square kilometer was yielded under circumstances which we know very well about 1962, And it was also made clear that this government will not allow any unilateral change of the LAC, consequent of which this clash happened at the Galwan Valley between Indian and Chinese soldiers. So I believe despite everything having been made clear, for the opposition to really twist, specifically to your question as to who is doing it, we saw how just a while back Congress party did a press conference in P. Chidambaram asked certain questions. We saw how Sonia Gandhi had asked certain questions about intelligence failure. Had there been intelligence failure, the Chinese would not have admitted that they have been obstructed and that they have also suffered casualties on their side. So I believe this statement really puts every fact into perspective and calls the bluff so far as some mischief was being attempted in terms of twisting the words of the Prime Minister.